Hello everyone, welcome back into another exciting session of object-oriented programming. Dear students, since last couple of lectures, we have started our discussion on object-oriented programming. Initially, we differentiated OOP from the procedure-oriented programming. We have seen how OOP is better than the procedure-oriented programming or functional programming. For that, we have seen the evolution of programming also. So we began with the binary language, that is to that we call as a machine level language. Then we evolved with the assembly level language. To that we had certain problems. For that we then evolved with the functional language. And then finally we have been arrived on the object oriented programming or object oriented paradigm. Later on we have seen different concepts associated with the object oriented programming. And in that we started with the objects. Objects are the basic runtime entities in an object-oriented programming. So basically, when we have to deal with any project, we have to identify the objects. Objects are the real-world entities which will play the role in your program. So it can be a person, it can be a place, it can be a bank account, it can be a table of data, it can be any relevant thing for your program. So this is how we can identify the objects in our program. Object will have two things inside in it. So if you try to open the objects, you will find out two compartments. First compartment is for the data which is associated with that object. So that is nothing but the attributes or the properties of that objects. So when we have to store the data about that object, we will store that in that first compartment. Then we have the second compartment. In the second compartment, we will store all the functions. So that is nothing but all the actions that object has to perform in the given code. So that we will write down in the function part of that object. So you can try to visualize the object like a box. If you open the box, there are two different compartments. In the first compartment, you will have a data which is associated with that object. And in the second compartment, you will have a functions. Functions are nothing but a role or actions that that object has to perform. Let's have an example of bank database management software. So what are the possible objects that I will have in the bank database management? So you can enlist, like I will have a bank customer, then I will have a bank employee, then I will have a bank details. So these are nothing but the possible objects that I can have in the bank database management. Alright, so now first we will take the bank customer as an object. So what data will be associated with that object, that I will need to think on. So for the bank customer, I will need to store certain data. So in that object, I will need to store the data about account ID of that customer, then the name of customer, then the balance, then if that person has taken a loan, then the loan amount, then mobile number, and the address. These are nothing but the possible data attributes which are associated with that object. Now what actions that object has to perform? So probably that customer wants to withdraw the money. So withdrawal is the one function. That a customer wants to credit the money. So credit will be the another function. That person wants to get the loan from the bank. So applying for the loan is the another function. So these are nothing but some of the functions which are associated with the bank customer object, isn't it? Now in the same program, I will have a bank employee also an object, isn't it? So what attributes will be associated with that also, that we will need to consider. So for the bank employee, we will have an employee ID as a data, then the name of employee as another data attribute, then the salary, then the role or designation, and then experience. These are some possible attributes which will be associated with the employee object, isn't it? What actions or what functions that object has to perform, so that also we will need to think upon. So probably that person is a service manager, so he has to provide the service, or that person is a loan manager, so he has to work on the loan sanctioning. So these are nothing but some sorts of functions that employee object has to perform. So this is how we will start thinking in the object oriented programming. Once we will have a problem statement in front of us, that that is nothing but the bank management software or bank database management software, then we started thinking in terms of objects, that which are the possible objects that we will need to work upon. We identified the objects as a customer and then as an employee. Then once we identified the objects, we started thinking about the data which will be associated with that objects. Once we identified the data, then we identified the roles or the functions that object has to perform, isn't it? So this is how we created objects, and we started using the objects in the object-oriented programming. Now all we have agreed that we will need objects in the object-oriented programming. So in the object-oriented programming, we have to create the objects, isn't it? As we have to use the objects, first we will need to create them. Now how we will create the objects? So for that we will need certain manufacturing process, isn't it? We will need certain sorts of structure which will manufacture the object according to our needs. So for that we will first set up the manufacturing unit, and that is nothing but the class. So class is nothing but a certain source of structure or a mechanism which will keep on producing the objects as we want. So now in the bank database management software, we will need two different classes, because we need two different objects, isn't it? One is a customer object and one is an employee object. Now for a customer object, we will need to create a class first. So that class will create the customer object. Once the manufacturing unit is ready, we can create as many objects as we want. So let's consider that bank has 1000 customers. So once the manufacturing process is set, once the class is ready, we can manufacture 1000 objects for the customer, isn't it? Now once all these objects are manufactured, these objects will look similar to you. The reason? Because all these are nothing but the customers, but they are not same. The reason? Because each of these customer object will get different name, different ID, different bank balance, but they will work in similar nature. The reason? Because some of the objects or some of the customer wants to withdraw money, some of these customers wants to credit the money. So in some sorts of their functions, they are similar, but their data associated with it is different. Bank balance is different, ID is different, isn't it? Account ID is different. So in that sense, they are similar in their nature. Once I will group all of them, I can form this as a one class, isn't it? So all these customers are nothing but a one class. Next, we will need employee object. Again, we cannot directly have an employee object. For that, we will need to create it first. But how we can create the employee object? So for that, we will need to set up the manufacturing process, isn't it? So first we will set up the manufacturing process for the employee object. Once that process has been set up, we can create as many objects of the employee as we want, isn't it? So first we will need to create a class employee. In that we have to create a structure so that whatever the objects which will be manufactured through that will look like an employee, isn't it? So all these employee objects will be similar in their nature. They will look similar to you, but they will not be same. Okay, the reason because the name, their ID, then their payment, then their role will be different apart from their counterparts, isn't it? So first we have created the customer object, then we created the employee object, and now once we have both objects readily available with us, then we can make them communicate with each other. So this is how the communication will happen. This is how the program will work in reality. So hope the concept of class is clear to you. Now why we call it as a class? Because this word class is coming from the word classification. Because as we needed, suppose thousands of objects, we have done the classification over here. For the bank management software, we needed thousands of objects, but we have done the classification over here. Classification in the sense we have grouped them according to their nature. So all the objects which will look similar, we have grouped them and we call them as a customer. All the objects which will look similar, we group them and we classified them as a employee. So that's why we used the word class over here. Hope concept of class and object is clear by now. Then we have seen the concept of data encapsulation. Now what is data encapsulation? First, we will see the concept of encapsulation. So encapsulation is nothing but enclosing the essential things apart from the outside world, isn't it? So for that, yesterday or in the last lecture, we took the example of a capsule, isn't it? Medicine capsule. So in that capsule, we have small granules which are separated from the outside world. So which are the granules which are really essential, we have grouped them and put into the one box or one particular unit, isn't it? And that has been protected from the outside world, isn't it? So that is nothing but the capsule. And in the data encapsulation, what we do, we store data and the functions which are acting on that data out from the outside world. So we wrap up the data and the functions together into the single unit. So to that we call as an encapsulation. So we achieve that encapsulation using class concept. So within the class we have a data and the functions which are acting upon that data, and that thing is separated from the outside world. Now let's continue with the example of a bank. In that we have one class in which we have a data associated with the customer and we have a functions which are acting as a customer, isn't it? Now these functions will act only on that data. Similarly, we have another class like a class employee. In that we have a data associated with the employee and the functions of employee. Now these functions can only act on the data of the employee only. We are not putting them together into a single unit, but they are separated. And how they are separated? So by encapsulating them. So this is nothing but a feature of object-oriented programming. Before we will see what data abstraction is, we'll try to understand the concept of abstraction. Abstraction is nothing but hiding the details, hiding the unessential details from the user. Now let's have an example of a television. You might have used the television remote to turn on the TV, isn't it? Now, what you generally do, you grab the remote in your hand, you press the button, power on button, and TV turns on. In order to turn on the TV, was it required to know how the television works? Was it required to get the signals, how the signal processing works? Was it required to be known to you that how these signals have been captured, how these have been processed, how it has been flashing on your television screen, how the pixels are working? You don't need to know anything of this. But despite of that, you can turn on the TV. So all these details are hidden from you. All these complexities are hidden from you. Just by pressing on the button, you can turn on the TV. So you just need to know which button needs to be pressed in order to turn on the television. So this is nothing but the abstraction. So all these internal details, all these wirings, all this circuitry, all these logics, all these software details are hidden from you, and what is exposed to you, that is only required things. That you just have to point out your remote to the television and you have to press the button, required button you have to press in order to get your function done, isn't it? In order to turn on your television. Let's have another example. I want to turn on the car. Now, what's the process to turn on the car? Just insert a key and turn it on, isn't it? Or push the button. But for that, is it required to know how the engine works? Is it required how it sucks the fuel from the fuel tank, how it puts that into the combustion engine, and how it ignites? You don't need to know all these details. But even though you don't need to know these details, despite of that also you can turn on the car, because you know the only access point from which you can turn on the car. So all this machinery, all these internal logics and details are hidden from you, and only essential things are given to you. That is nothing but how to insert the key and which button to press in order to turn on the car. So that is nothing but the abstraction. The things have been abstracted to you. Okay, the details of these workings are abstracted from you, and only essential things are given to you. Essential access points are given to you. So that is nothing but the abstraction. Now, data abstraction. Now, data abstraction in the object-oriented programming says that data is not directly exposed to the user, but it is abstracted. That simply means you cannot directly work with the data, or you're not supposed to work directly with the data. But between you and the data, there is something which is sitting in between, and that is nothing but the function. So how the things are being done over here, that data and a function, they are supposed to work collaboratively. That function will access the data. So if I want to access the data, I will first need to request to that function, and then that function will access the data, and then it will supply it to me. But for that, I don't need to know that how this function is working, how that function is accessing that data. Only what I need to know is that how to work with that function. Okay, what query I will need to fire to that function so that the desired data will be extracted from the database. That only I will need to know. But I don't need to know how this function is internally written. I don't need to know the internal logic of the function. I don't need to know how the data is being stored in the database. I don't need to know all these details. But despite of not knowing all these details, I can access the data through functions. So I have certain interfaces, like we have the remote control. Remote control is an interface. The button on the remote control is nothing but an interface. So similarly, in the function also we have certain interfaces. Through those interfaces, we can access the function, and that function will access the data. Okay, so this is how the abstraction is done. Okay, data is not directly exposed. Even abstraction is done on another level also. Like, I will take another example. Now, how many of you know how the data is actually stored on your hard disk? It is stored in the binary form. All of we agreed on that thing, isn't it? But how the things are grouped there, how the things have been segregated over there, in which format it is saved, on which track of the particular hard disk it is stored, on which platter it is stored, on which sector it is stored, all these things are not known to you. But if I wanted to play the movie, I can simply play it without knowing all these details. So data has been abstracted from me, isn't it? How the internal functionaries are being done, those things are hidden from me. So that is how abstraction has been achieved in our systems, in our laptops, on our mobile phones. Okay, so this is not a new concept over here. Abstraction has been there since long, but data abstraction has been achieved in the object-oriented programming, which wasn't available directly in the procedure-oriented programming or in the function programming. Take another example of a printf. How many of you know how printf works? No one knows, isn't it? Because printf is very complex function, isn't it? But we know how to use it. By using printf, we can print something on the screen. So printf is nothing but the way in which abstraction has been done. So in the functional programming also, in certain way abstraction was done, but that wasn't explicit. It wasn't told to you that these things have been abstracted from you. But in the object-oriented programming, we have achieved data abstraction on a larger scale. Through the classes, through the objects, through the functions, we have achieved a data abstraction in a larger manner in the object-oriented programming. So hope data abstraction is now clear to you. Now don't get confused in the data encapsulation and data abstraction. Encapsulation is nothing but enclosing all these things in a one certain way. Now I will take the same example of television and we will see how the encapsulation and abstraction is different from each other. Let's say we have the television. Now how the encapsulation works in the television? So I have all the units which are contributing in order to broadcast the television, in order to broadcast the picture, which has been wrapped in a single box. So you have a speaker, you have a DVB, digital video broadcaster unit, you have a picture tube. All these units have been packed together under one box, and this has been separated from the outside world. So this is how encapsulation has been achieved in the television, isn't it? If you keep speakers on one side, if you keep the broadcasting television on the another side, if you put the your picture tube on the another side, then these things will be very difficult to manage. But as we wanted to work together, as we wanted to put all these things together, we put them in one particular box and it has been encapsulated. So this is how encapsulation has been achieved in the television. How abstraction has been achieved? Now in the abstraction, In order to turn on the television, you don't need to know how the power is being supplied to the television. You don't need to know how the speakers are working. You don't need to know how the picture tube is working. But simply you will need to work with the remote control interface. So the remote control, you just have to press the desired button to get the function done from your television. So this is how abstraction has been achieved. So hope encapsulation and abstraction, both concepts are clear to you. Both are the different concepts. Encapsulation is putting the required things together under the one single unit. And abstraction means giving only essential things to the user by hiding unnecessary details from the user. So we are hiding unessential details from the user and we are just giving whatever is required to the user. So this is how we have achieved the abstraction. So data encapsulation and data abstraction both are very brilliant features which have been offered in the object-oriented programming. Now let's see another concept, that is inheritance. Now if someone is rich, that person would have worked really very hard to get to that success, to get to that richness, or that person might have inherited properties from the parents. So inheritance means getting something from your ancestors. If I say this entire property is ancestral property, or he is rich because his parents were rich and he got all his properties and richness and wealth from his parents inherited. So that is nothing but inheritance. In general sense, inheritance means getting something from your ancestors, getting something readily available from your parents. So that is nothing but inheritance. So the same concept is used in the object-oriented programming also. In the object-oriented programming, you can inherit some of the features from the classes which are already written. So here we are talking about the reusability feature of the object-oriented programming. Reusability in the sense, here we can use something which is readily available. You don't need to rewrite the code again and again to get the same feature done. So that is the inheritance. Let's take a simple example. I want to work with the bank database management. Now in the bank database management, the first thing that we need is the user identification or user validation. So user will need to enter the user ID and password, and then it will be validated, and then user will get the internal access. Okay. So now in order to create that entire form, one has two options. One can rewrite the entire code for the user ID, getting the user ID and password, then matching it with the database, or they can use the readily available code which is available off the shelf. So which one will be the better option? Obviously the better option in terms of cost, in terms of time, is nothing but to get something which is readily available, because it is off the shelf available, isn't it? So this is the new paradigm of programming which is now prevailing, that is reusability. So you are not supposed to write down the code for something, but for the most of the functions or for most of the features, code will be already written. It is available. You have to just take it, you have to connect different modules together, and you have to get your work done. Okay, so that is a reusability feature. So it's better to get the code for the user validation from the off the shelf, so which is already written, which is already tested, isn't it? So I don't need to rewrite the code again and again for the same thing. So inheritance is available in the object-oriented programming, through which you can make the certain features available from the parent class. Okay, when we will see the inheritance in detail, we will see how the inheritance is actually made applicable, how it is implemented in the object-oriented programming. But hope concept is clear. This is the another concept, polymorphism. Now, what is the meaning of polymorphism? If we will try to break it down, poly and then morphism. Most of you know the meaning of poly. We generally say polytechnic. The meaning of poly is multiple, many. Technique means, polytechnic means multiple techniques are taught over there. That's why we call it as a polytechnic. Polymorphism is nothing but taking multiple shapes depending upon the circumstances. depending upon the behavior. You have to change the behavior depending upon the circumstances. So that is nothing but a polymorphism. I'll give a simple example so that you will understand it. Let's consider you are sitting at home and you are pretending that you are studying. Okay, you are not studying, you are just pretending that you are studying. You are working on your phone. Okay, probably you are chatting with someone. And suddenly your parents comes into your room. What happens? You just put the phone aside and you just flip your aside and you start reading out the book, isn't it? Actually, you were not studying, but the moment someone entered in your room, you started studying. So what was that? You changed your behavior. And how did you change your behavior? Based upon the surroundings, based upon the circumstances. Earlier, you were alone in the room, you were doing something different. But the moment someone came in, the moment surrounding changed, depending upon that circumstances, you changed the behavior and now you started studying. So you actually worked in a different way depending upon the circumstances. So you exhibited different behavior. So that was nothing but a polymorphism, isn't it? Here one example is given, a person. Once the person is in the family, he behaves differently. Once he goes to the office, he behaves differently. Once he is in the meeting, he behaves differently. Once he goes for the shopping, he behaves differently. Based upon the circumstances, based upon the surroundings, person behaves differently. But person is not different. The person is same. But he exhibits different behavior. And how? Depending upon the circumstances, depending upon the surroundings. So that is nothing but a polymorphism. So here in the polymorphism concept, we have an object which will behave differently depending upon the circumstances. So depending upon where you are using that object, it will behave differently. So that is nothing but this feature of polymorphism. Now how it will be accomplished, that is a part of understanding the polymorphism that we will see, I think, in the second last chapter of your syllabus. But hope polymorphism concept is clear to you. Well, we ran out of time now. So we will close today's session. We will conclude it today here itself. Hope the concepts of object-oriented programming that we have discussed today and since last couple of days are clear to you. We'll meet you again in another lecture. Till then, keep studying. Thank you.